Cloud computing is the ability to deliver on-demand computing services over the internet and pay-as-you-go basis. With cloud, rather than managing files on local storage devices, cloud computing makes it possible to save them over the internet. So you can access files over internet, and if you want to give access to someone else, it will be easy if other person have access to the internet. Any industry can use the cloud for a wide variety of use cases such as data backup, disaster recovery, virtual desktops, software development and testing, big data analytics, and customer facing web applications. For example, healthcare companies are using cloud to develop more personalized treatments for patients, and financial service companies are using the cloud for real time fraud detection and prevention. So, why cloud computing? So, now let's see what are the benefits of cloud computing when compared to the on premises infrastructure. To use an on premises software application, a business needs to purchase hardware, software, licenses, and implementation services. What is not often considered at the time of purchase is the cost of hardware, license maintenance, and IT system personnel. Also, the on-premises hardware needs to be stored in a secure, climate-controlled environment to ensure optimal performance, limit downtime, and prevent unauthorized data access. In cloud, no experts required for hardware or software maintenance. On the other side of the spectrum, cloud-based system gives you easy access to a broad range of technologies so that you can innovate faster and build nearly anything that you can imagine. You can quickly spin up resources in a matter of minutes as you need them, from infrastructure services such as compute, storage, machine learning, data lakes, and much more. With cloud, the billing model is pay as you go type, meaning we use less and pay less, or we use more and pay less per unit. On the other hand, in on premises, we pay everything upfront. So now let's see what are the types of cloud computing. Not all the clouds are the same, and not a single type of cloud computing is suitable for every business out there. A variety of different models, types, as well as services have evolved to offer the right solution for the different needs of customers. For the first, one needs to determine the cloud computing architecture and the services it would be implemented on. There exist mainly three different types of cloud services. They are public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid cloud. The public clouds are owned and operated by third-party cloud service providers who deliver their computing resources such as servers and storage on the internet. AWS is one such example of public cloud. On a public cloud, all the hardware and the software and other supporting infrastructure is managed and owned by cloud providers themselves. One must access these services and manage one's account by using a web browser. The private cloud refers to the cloud computing resources that are used exclusively by only single business or organization. The private cloud may be physically located in the company's on-site data center. Some of the organizations even pay the third-party service providers for hosting their private cloud. In private cloud, the services and the infrastructure are maintained over the private network. Coming to hybrid clouds, it is a combination of public cloud and a private cloud bound together with the help of technology, which allows the data and applications to be shared among them. By allowing the data and applications to transfer between the public and private clouds, a hybrid cloud provides the business with flexibility, better deployment options, and helps to optimize the existing security, infrastructure, and compliance. Coming to the different types of cloud based on service model, we can categorize them as infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. If your business needs just a virtual machine, and if you have all the expertise to maintain and install the software, then you can go for infrastructure as a service. Here, the users who install and maintain software. If you only want a platform or an interface to build software products, then you can pick platform as a service. This helps you to be more efficient as you don't need to worry about the resource procurement, capacity planning, software maintenance, patching, or any of the other undifferentiated heavy lifting involved in running your applications. Software developers will be the users for platform as a service. For software as a service, it provides you with a complete product that is run and managed by service providers. With SaaS, you don't have to think about how the service is maintained or how the underlying infrastructure is managed. You only need to think about how to use that software, and the user will be end customer itself. So what is AWS? Amazon Web Services is a subsidiary of Amazon.com that provides on-demand cloud computing platforms to individuals, companies, and governments on a paid subscription basis. AWS was officially launched in 2006, and by 2010, all of Amazon.com moved over to AWS. Some of the popular companies that use AWS are Samsung, OLX, Dish TV, Domino's, etc. As of 2020, AWS has more than 175 services to offer its clients. There is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. AWS is also a cloud storage platform where you can store all the data. Now let's see the benefits of using AWS. The biggest reason for why AWS is one of the top cloud service providers is billing. You need to make payment only for the database, compute power, storage, and the resources you consume with no advanced commitment or long-term contracts. Amazon provides the benefits of cost reduction to customers in the form of lower prices, as it has the ability to build and manage global infrastructure at scale. Coming to the next one, Amazon is popular for its Amazon Web Services provide a global infrastructure with over 60 availability zones in 20 geographical regions around the world. It is also promised that Amazon will provide 99.95% availability of services for every region. Security. Security is the most important feature of AWS. The main advantage of AWS is that it uses an end-to-end concept to secure the infrastructure, including operational, physical, and software measures. AWS ensures the integrity, availability, and confidentiality of the data. AWS enables you to select the operating system, programming language, database, and other services you need. With AWS, you receive a virtual environment that lets you load the software and the services as your application requires. This eases the migration process for existing applications while preserving options for building new solutions. Using AWS tools like auto-scaling, elastic load balancing, your application can scale up or down based on demand. Backed by Amazon's massive infrastructure, you have access to compute and storage resources when you need them. Finally, the sign-up process is very easy to create AWS account. All you need is an email ID, credit card, and you're good to go. You can use the AWS Management Console or access to AWS application hosting platform. Coming to infrastructure, AWS overall infrastructure is divided into two things: regions and availability zones. You can view the availability zones and regions by just typing infrastructure.aws in the URL. As of now, AWS have 24 regions and 77 availability zones, And each region will have a name as Asia Pacific, which is Mumbai region, which also have a code name as AP South 1. So what is region? A region is a physical location where the data centers are located around the world, and each region will have a logical data center known as availability zone. The number of availability zones differ from region to region. For example, if you see US East North Virginia here, it has 4 availability zones which are named as A, B, and C, D. If you see any other region like Asia Pacific, Singapore, it has only 2 availability zones, which is Zone A and Zone B. So all these AZs are interconnected, so there won't be any issue with the traffic flow between them, and all the traffic between AZs is encrypted. Also, the network performance is sufficient to accomplish synchronous replication between AZs. If application is replicated across multiple AZs, the companies are protected from issues such as power outages, tornadoes, earthquakes, as AZs are physically separated by a meaningful distance. So now let's see what are the different domains in AWS. AWS provides several services, and each service is categorized under domains such as compute, storage, database, etc. Let's cover some of the commonly used domains. The first one is compute. Compute domain includes services related to computing workloads that are used to host a website, process backend data, etc. Services under compute domain are EC2, Lambda. AWS also offers plenty of choices to users for backing up information, archiving, and disaster recovery. The services under storage domain are S3, Amazon Glacier, AWS Snowball, etc. Next is database domain. Database domain is used for database related workload and services under database. And services under database domain are Amazon RDS, which is a relational database service, DynamoDB, Redshift. Also, AWS offers the highest network availability amongst all the cloud service providers to increase the throughput with on-time content delivery and reduced network latency. It includes Amazon Route 53, AWS Direct Connect. Security. The services under security domain are used to manage, to authenticate, and provide security to AWS resources, and these are IAM, KMS, etc. And there are also other domains like monitoring, which has services used to monitor the resources, and analytics, where you can perform data analytics on any of your data, and machine learning domain as well. So now let's see some of the commonly used AWS services. EC2. EC2 is one of the commonly used compute service to launch a virtual machine. EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. Using Amazon EC2 eliminates your need to invest in hardware upfront, so you can even deploy and develop applications faster. We will see how to launch a EC2 instance shortly. Coming to VPC, VPC enables you to launch AWS resources in a virtual network that you have defined. This virtual network closely resembles the traditional network that you would operate in your own data center. Next is S3. Amazon S3 is a simple web service interface that you can use to store and retrieve any amount of data at any time from anywhere on the web. It gives any developer access to the same highly scalable, fast, inexpensive data storage infrastructure that Amazon uses to run its own global network of websites. We will be discussing more details about S3 in coming slides. RDS. Relational Database Service is a web service that makes it easier to set up, operate, and scale a relational database in AWS Cloud. It provides cost-efficient, resizable capacity for an industry-standard relational database and manages common database administration tasks. IAM, Identity and Access Management, is one of the highly used service which comes under security domain. IAM helps you securely control access to AWS resources. You use IAM to control who is authenticated, that is people who are signed in, and authorized, that is people who has permissions to use AWS resources. CloudWatch. CloudWatch monitors your AWS resources and the applications you run on AWS in real time. You can use CloudWatch to collect and track metrics, which are variables you can measure for your resources and applications. Finally, Amazon Athena. Amazon Athena is an interactive query service that makes it easy to analyze data directly in Amazon S3 using standard SQL queries. Now let's look at one of the most popular service AWS offers, which is EC2. So what is EC2? It stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. EC2 is secure, resizable compute capacity in the cloud. So what does that mean? It's basically like a virtual machine only hosted in AWS instead of your own data center. With EC2, you can have capacity you want when you need it, and you are in complete control of your own resource instances. With EC2, you pay only for what you use, that is, only pay for the time when the instance is up and running. Also, with EC2, you should be able to avoid a lot of wasted capacity. You can select the capacity you need right now and grow or shrink when you need. So over the time, when the demand of your application change, you can scale the infrastructure accordingly. With EC2, you can have your server up and running in minutes rather than waiting for months. Coming to on-premises, it can really take up to 2 to 3 months to get the server up and running in your data center. So why is that? Well, firstly, getting approval to purchase the hardware and then wait for a month or so to get the hardware delivered. And once it's delivered, we then have to physically install it in a data center. Now let's explore the various pricing models for EC2. There are few different pricing models. Now let's start with on-demand. And it is the default pricing option. So with on-demand, you pay by the hour or the second, depending on the instance you are running, and there isn't any long-term contract with on-demand pricing model. We then have reserved instances, and with reserved instances, you can reserve EC2 capacity for 1 or 3 years, and in return for this commitment, you can get up to 72% discount on the hourly charge. Also, reserved instances operate at a regional level. So let's say, for example, you commit to use 10 instances of type T3.medium in US East 1 region, and if you spin up 10 instances, that will be covered by the reserved capacity. But if you launch the instances in a different region, that's not going to cover under reserved capacity, and you will be charged for on-demand pricing by default. We then have spot instances, and this is where you can purchase unused capacity at a massive discount of up to 90%, and the price fluctuates with supply and demand. These are used when applications have a flexible start and end times. Let's see what are the different types of EC2 instances available. So what do we mean different instance types? Well, this is all about the underlying hardware that is used to host EC2 instance. Now, instance type also determines other characteristics or capabilities like CPU, memory, and storage. So each instance type offers different compute, memory, storage capabilities, and are grouped into instance families. So how do you know which one to choose? So the simple answer is to select the instance type based on your application requirement. So you select an instance type based on the requirement of the application that you plan to run on your instance. Now let's see one of the most commonly used service under storage domain, S3, which stands for Simple Storage Service. S3 provides users with secure, durable, highly scalable object storage. It is really easy to use with simple web service interface to store and retrieve any amount of data from anywhere on the web. So S3 is the safe place to store your files and data is spread across multiple devices and facilities. So that means there is an element of high availability or disaster recovery already built into AWS service. And what that means is Amazon Cloud lose one of their devices or one of their facilities, and S3 service will still be available. S3 also provides unlimited storage. That means you don't have to worry about allocating space or projecting how many terabytes of space you are going to use in S3. Within S3, files are stored in bucket, and bucket is similar to folder. It's the name that AWS uses for the location where you are storing the files. S3 has a universal namespace, that is, names must be unique globally, and it is also built for 99.99% availability for S3 platform. The availability simply refers to the uptime, so that the amount of time the service is actually available. Amazon also guarantees 11 nines durability for S3. Durability means the amount of data that you can expect to lose over a given year. You can also secure the data using bucket policies, which can restrict access to specific users, and I'll show you on how to set these bucket policies shortly. Coming to S3 storage classes. So these are like different S3 storage classes, and the regular S3, which is suitable for most workloads, and that has 99.99% availability. It stores data redundantly across multiple devices in multiple facilities and is designed to sustain a loss of two facilities concurrently. So this means S3 can sustain hardware failure or a device failure, but not just in one location. There is also S3IA, which stands for infrequently accessed. And this is for the data that is accessed less frequently but requires rapid access when you need it. You pay a lower fee when compared to the standard S3. Also, there is S3 One Zone IA, which is same as IA. However, the data stored in single availability zone with 99.5% availability, and the cost is 20% less than regular S3 IA. Finally, there is S3 Glacier. Glacier is used for archiving. It is very cheap when compared to other S3 storage classes, and it's really optimized for the data that is infrequently accessed, because it takes around 3 to 5 hours to retrieve the data from Glacier. So it is suitable to store historical data that you don't access frequently. So the next service is Identity Access Management, which comes under security domain. So what is IAM? Essentially, IAM allows you to manage users and their level of access to AWS console. IAM gives centralized control of AWS account. It also gives shared access to your AWS account. It gives granular permissions. So this means you can enable different level of access to different users within your organization. IAM allows multi-factor authentication, and this is where users can access only after successfully completing multiple independent authentication mechanisms. So for example, providing a username and password is one authentication mechanism, and then providing a software token, and that could be via token generator like Google Authenticator, as a second authentication mechanism. It also provides temporary access for users and services as necessary. So for example, if you developed a web or mobile phone application, you could configure identity access management to allow users to have a temporary access to AWS resources within your account. For example, to enable access to S3 or store and retrieve data stored in S3 bucket. IAM also allows to set up your own password rotation policy, and it integrates with many different AWS services. So let's see some of the commonly used terms used in IAM. Firstly, we have users. So this is the end user who log into AWS console and interacting with AWS resources. We then have groups, which are collection of users under one set of permissions. So for example, your team needs to read and write files to S3 bucket. They need to have a permission to do this. So it makes sense to create a group with required permissions, and all you need to do is add the relevant users to that group, and they all will have permissions to read that S3 bucket. We also have roles. You can create roles and then assign them to AWS resources. A role is used to define a set of permissions, for example, S3 bucket access, and then that role can be assumed by the users or AWS services such as EC2. So you might have an EC2 instance which need to query a database or access a file from S3. You can configure that using a role. And finally, we have a policy, which is a document that defines one or more permissions and a policy that can be attached to users or a group or a role. And when we attach a policy, the user group or role will then have the permissions defined within that policy. And it is possible for the user group and role to share the same policy. Let's have a look at the simple IAM policy example. Let's say you have two buckets, bucket 1 and bucket 2. You would like to grant IAM group full permissions to access bucket 1, and you would like to give only read permissions to the bucket 2. Read permissions in the sense users can only view the files in that bucket, but they cannot upload any files. So to achieve this use case, you can create an IAM role in which you can define all S3 permissions, which is defined as S3 colon asterisk. And you can give the bucket name, which is bucket 1 under the resource. For granting only read permissions, you can specify the S3 get API calls, which is used to get the files from the bucket, and you can give the resource name as bucket 2 under the resource. Upon creating the IAM policy, you can attach this to any user or role, and I will show you a quick demo on how to do this shortly. And let me show you on how to log into AWS console. And I'll show you a few of the concepts that we discussed. Before that, this is the website that I mentioned where you can check the available regions and availability zones across the globe. And let's say this is the Mumbai region where one of our region is. And if you click on Mumbai region, you can see there are like 3 availability zones, which are marked as blue dots. And these 3 availability zones are interlinked. If you see, there are like 4 regions in United States, and if you click any of them, it shows you the availability zones. So let me show you the AWS console. So this is the AWS Management Console, the home page, and from the console, you can have a look at the number of regions available. So this is the list of the regions that AWS has. And now let's go to the EC2 console. So EC2 is under compute domain. And once you click on EC2, so this is the EC2 dashboard. And if you see, right now I am in US West Oregon region, and Oregon has 4 availability zones, which are US West 2A, 2B, 2C, and 2D. And this states that all the 4 regions, all the 4 availability zones and the region are healthy and there isn't any issue going on right now. So now let's go and check out how to launch the instance. After clicking the instance tab, right now I have one instance up and running. So now let's try to create another one by clicking launch instance. And after clicking that, Amazon provides different set of AMIs, which are basically images on which you can install or run any application. So for the time being, let's select the Amazon Linux AMI 1. And these are different instance types that we discussed. So if you want to see the instance types specific to storage, if you select the storage, it gives you the list of storage instance types. And you can see there is a difference in the CPUs and the memory based on your application. You can pick whichever instance type you want. So for now, let's go with the smallest instance type, T2.micro. And after selecting the instance type, click next. And in step 3, this is where we basically give all the networking configurations. Right now, I am using the default ones. And next is storage. By default, an EC2 instance is provided with the root volume with the default size of 8 gigabytes. And if you want more volume, you can just click add new volume and you can specify the amount of size you want. After selecting the volume, you just have to click next, and this is where we select the security group. So security group basically has the inbound and outbound traffic control, which you are allowing to your EC2 instance. So in every region, you have few security groups which are default. So right now I'm selecting the default one, which has all traffic allowed to this instance. Finally, you can hit launch, and while launching, you have to select a key pair, which we basically use while doing SSH into the instance. So once you hit the launch instance, it gives you the unique ID. This is the instance ID that is unique for every instance you create. So after clicking the instance ID, right now it is in pending state, and within a minute or so, it goes to running. And so here are some basic details of the instance. So this is the instance ID, and this is the instance type that we selected. And every instance will have a public IP address, which you can use. And this instance is launched in availability zone US West 2C. And if you see here, the instance state changed to running. So now let's try to log into this instance. So in order to do this, we need to have the public IP address, which I copied, and so in order to SSH into the instance, we need a PuTTY, which you use to log in from Windows Server. So I am pasting the IP address that I copied, and in order to SSH, we need to select the key pair that we created. I'm selecting the key pair and open. So this opens a terminal where you can log in as EC2 user, and it is authenticating, and this is how it looks when you launch a server and SSH into that. So now let's check out the IAM. So this is how the IAM console looks like, and IAM has groups where you can create a group and you can add users into that. or you have users where you can create different users to assign permissions. We also have roles, and these are like roles which I already created. And finally, policies. Amazon provides with AWS managed policies, like the default policies which you can use, or you can create a policy with any customized permissions that you want to grant to users. So when you see the type, when it says AWS managed, these are all the IAM roles provided by AWS by default. So now if you see any user created policy, it says customer managed. This is the IAM policy that I created. And if you see the policy JSON document, it basically has S3 all API calls, like the S3 colon #, under action, and the effect is deny. And under resource, I have specified a bucket name EC2-S3- permissions. So what this IAM policy basically does is it denies all permissions to this specific S3 bucket. And after creating this IAM policy, I have attached this IAM policy to this role. If you click on this role, you can basically see the same policy that is attached, and it has the deny action. Now let's try to assign this particular role to the EC2 instance that we created. In order to do that, you can select the EC2 instance, and under actions, under instance settings, you can click on attach or replace IAM role. Under IAM role, you can select the role that created, and you can simply click on apply. IAM roles come into picture as soon as you apply them. So you have IAM role attached to this EC2 instance. Now let's go to S3 console and let's check out the bucket that we mentioned in the IAM role, and that is EC2-S3- permissions. And after clicking the bucket, it has a file. It has a sample file called newconsumer.py, which is a Python file. So now let's try to access this file from the EC2 instance that we launched. In order to access the file, you can basically use AWS CLI commands. Like you can just simply run the command from the server, and in order to do so, you can just type AWS space S3 ls, and you can give the S3 bucket name. And what this command basically does is it lists all the files inside that bucket. So once you hit the enter, it says access denied while calling the list operations. So that means the EC2 instance doesn't have access to this S3 bucket, and that is because of the IAM role we attached to this instance. And now, if you want to give access to that bucket, now let's change the policy that we created earlier. Edit policy. And instead of deny, you can simply replace it with allow to the same bucket, and you can review the policy and save the changes. Now it allows all the S3 API calls for the instances which have this particular IAM role. So now let's try to run the same command and see if we have access to the files inside that. Now you can see it was able to list the file which is already inside that specific bucket. And that is about how IAM and EC2 works. So now let's quickly look at S3 bucket. So these are the different buckets that I already have. And if you want to create a new bucket, you can just hit create bucket, and you have to give a unique name. You can also select in which region you want, and you can simply hit the create button and you'll get the bucket created. So I already have a EC2 bucket, and let's right now under permissions and bucket policy. Right now, the bucket policy is all empty. So anyone can, the user who logged into the console can access the files that are already in the bucket. So now let's try to add a bucket policy so that users will only have access to upload any file, but they can't download any file that is already located in this bucket. So I'm using the same policy that we discussed in the IAM. So this basically denies all the API calls, but in the action, instead of specifying all S3 API calls, we are specifying just the get API calls, so which tries to get the files from the S3 bucket. Let's change the resource name. After giving the resource name, you can hit save. And after adding the bucket policy, you go back, and if you click on the bucket, so right now you can see the same file exists here. But if you click on that file and if you try to download it, it says access denied. And yeah, it says the same as error message, access denied. So this basically means you can control access to any files that you upload to S3 bucket, and you can simply control them by writing bucket policies, and you can control them between different users, and you can specify the IAM rules, etc. So now let me show you a quick demo on accessing the files in S3. So here I have a bucket called sample data test, and inside that bucket I have a student performance, which is a CSV file which have a data regarding multiple students with their marks and etc. So in order to view the contents of the file, you need to download it and view it in a Excel. So let me show you on how to use Athena. So this is the main page of Athena, where you can simply run different queries. So here, so this is the create table statement, which basically creates a table on the data which resides in this location, which this is the S3 bucket. So this basically have the column names, like the if you have any Excel sheet, it will have a column names. So I just gave those column names in the create table statement, and when you hit the run query, it creates let me remove the bucket policy that we attached to that bucket. This doesn't have any bucket policy, so after running the query, it got completed successfully. And if you see under tables, it created a table called sample student data. And you don't have to load any data into it, like manually enter the data as it is created on the CSV file that we already stored in S3 bucket. So you simply have to run a few sample queries in order to view the data which is in that particular file. So let's run few simple select commands to see the data inside that file. So if you want to run a select query, this is the select query that I already have. Let me change the table name. So yeah, this is the table that we created earlier. And if you simply write select star from that table, it basically lists all the contents that are already in the CSV file. I just limited it to 10. And if you want to query any data and filter it with any columns, so you can run another query like this. So this basically gives the data from the same table. And if you see, it has a column called lunch with different values like standard, free, and all. So you can get the data where lunch is specified as standard. And after running this query, there is a typo in the table name. So now I think it should work. And so this basically gives all the data which has standard under the lunch. And I think that's it for today's session. And yeah, so these are like all the AWS services that are mainly used in Amazon from different clients. And these are all like different services which you can give a try if you are interested. Uh,